apologize to my ex, or I'm filing for divorce. When my husband threw those words across the dinner table, his eyes were cold, calculating, and victorious. He thought he had me cornered. He thought I'd bow down, beg for forgiveness, and let his ex-wife walk all over our marriage just to keep our comfortable life intact. Everyone in his family looked at me like I was a broken woman about to surrender. They didn't know I'd already visited my attorney. At the final family meeting, my husband slid a 4-page legal agreement across the table, smugly waiting for my signature. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I simply handed the document to his 19-year-old son and said, "Read page 4 out loud." By the time he finished the first paragraph, my husband's face went completely white, and his ex-wife dropped her glass. My name is Clara. At 32 years old, I thought I had built a solid, unwavering life with my husband, Mark. But after 2 years of marriage, I realized I wasn't his wife. I was just an obstacle standing between him and his past. Mark's ex-wife, Brenda, was a master of chaos. She made a sport out of sabotaging our lives, always popping up with fake emergencies and manipulative tears. The breaking point came at a family charity dinner last weekend. Brenda staged a scene, accusing me of humiliating her in front of everyone. Instead of defending me, Mark stood beside her, taking her side without hesitation. The next evening, he cornered me at our dinner table. He leaned in, his eyes cold and devoid of affection, and hurled a brutal ultimatum directly at my face. Apologize to my ex by tomorrow morning, or I'm filing for divorce. He sat back with a smug grin, entirely convinced he held all the power. He genuinely believed I would break down, swallow my pride, and beg to keep my place in his world. To keep Mark in line, Brenda didn't just use fake drama. She used their 19-year-old son, Leo. For years, Brenda had conditioned Leo to view me as the cold stepmother who stole his father away. Whenever I walked into a room, Leo's jaw would tighten, his arms crossing in defensive silence. What neither Leo nor Mark realized was that I wasn't the villain in their story. When Mark's poor investments left him unable to cover Leo's university tuition last fall, it was my personal savings that quietly cleared the 5-figure balance. I paid his fees, kept the household running, and absorbed their quiet hostility, hoping that time and kindness would heal the fracture. Instead, Mark and Brenda mistook my patience for weakness. They assumed I was just a naive, quiet woman financially dependent on Mark's status. They forgot that long before I met Mark, I had built a successful career as a senior corporate accountant. They thought they were dealing with a frightened housewife who would accept any insult to avoid being alone. They had no idea that my sharp eye for numbers was about to dismantle their entire dynamic. Instead of screaming, crying, or pleading for Mark to change his mind, I simply nodded and said, "Fine. Let's meet at your lawyer's office to finalize everything." Mark looked surprised by my sudden compliance, but his smug grin returned instantly. He thought I had surrendered. But while he spent the next 48 hours bragging to Brenda about his quick victory, I went straight to work. I spent 2 sleepless nights combing through every single financial document in our house. As a corporate accountant, tracking hidden paper trails was my specialty, and what I uncovered made my blood run cold. Over the past 18 months, Mark had secretly opened a joint credit line using my personal credit rating as collateral. He had funneled over $200,000 straight into Brenda's failing boutique business. He intended to pin that massive debt entirely on me in the divorce settlement. I took my evidence directly to my attorney, a ruthless family law specialist named Sarah. Together, we drafted a binding legal addendum, sealed inside a thick manila envelope. Mark believed we were meeting to sign my apology and surrender. He had no idea I was bringing a trap of his own making. The conference room at Mark's attorney's office was suffocating. Mark sat at the center of the table, looking like a king preparing to accept a surrender. Brenda was perched beside him, wearing a triumphant smile and a diamond necklace Mark had likely bought with my money. Leo sat at the far end, staring at his hands with a mixture of anger and awkward hesitation. "Let's make this quick," Mark's attorney said, sliding a 4-page document toward me. This agreement includes a full written apology to Brenda, a waiver of your rights to the marital home, and your commitment to share the accrued marital debts. Brenda smirked, leaning back to watch me break down. Mark tapped his pen against the table, his eyes commanding me to comply. "Sign it, Clara," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Save yourself the embarrassment of a drawn-out battle." I didn't reach for the pen. I didn't shed a single tear. I calmly looked at Mark, then turned my attention to Leo. "I'll consider signing," I said smoothly, "on one condition. Leo has to review the agreement first." Mark laughed, a bitter, dismissive sound. "Leo doesn't need to read legal papers, Clara. Stop stalling and sign." "Let the boy read," I replied, sliding the folder across the mahogany table directly into Leo's hands. "Turn to page 4, Leo. Read the third paragraph out loud." Leo looked confused, but his fingers slowly flipped through the pages. The room fell into a tense, heavy silence. Brenda's smug grin faltered slightly as Leo's eyes scanned the page. Suddenly, his breath hitched. "What is this?" Leo whispered, his voice trembling as he looked up at his father. "Page 4 says the $250,000 debt wasn't a business loan. It says Dad withdrew money directly from my college trust fund, the trust Grandpa left me, and transferred it to Mom's boutique account." The color completely drained from Mark's face. Brenda dropped her glass of water, sending ice shattering across the table. "Read the rest, Leo," I said quietly. Leo's eyes widened in shock. "It also says this house doesn't belong to Dad. It was purchased entirely through Clara's pre-marriage inheritance, and Dad is being served an eviction notice effective in 48 hours. The room exploded into absolute chaos. Leo stood up so fast his chair slammed into the wall behind him. "You stole my trust fund?" he yelled, his voice cracking with utter betrayal as he glared at Mark and Brenda. "You told me Clara was the greedy one. You told me she was taking everything." Mark scrambled to his feet, his hands shaking violently as he reached for the papers. "Leo, son, wait. It's a misunderstanding. She's manipulating the numbers." "The bank statements don't lie, Mark," my attorney, Sarah, chimed in calmly, opening her briefcase to display the certified forensic audit. "Every transaction is traced, signed, and stamped. If you don't agree to Clara's full terms today, the police report for trust fund embezzlement and credit fraud will be filed by noon." Brenda turned on Mark like a viper, desperately trying to shield herself. "I didn't know where the money came from. Mark said it was an investment." "You knew exactly what it was," Mark shouted back, his smug composure completely destroyed. I sat in total silence, watching the two of them tear each other apart. I picked up my pen, signed my attorney's clean divorce settlement, slid it across the table, and walked out without looking back. 6 months have passed since that day in the conference room, and my life has transformed into something genuinely peaceful. Mark's world collapsed like a house of cards. Facing the undeniable evidence of embezzlement, he was forced to liquidate his remaining assets to reimburse Leo's trust fund, leaving him completely bankrupt and living in a tiny, cramped apartment. Brenda's boutique closed its doors permanently under the weight of unpaid debts, and the toxic alliance between them shattered beyond repair. The most surprising turn came from Leo. A month after the divorce was finalized, he reached out to me. We met for coffee, where he sincerely apologized for years of misplaced anger. Today, I continue to mentor him as he finishes his degree. I kept my home, freed myself from every trace of their financial manipulation, and launched an independent consulting firm dedicated to helping women protect their assets and regain their financial independence. Looking back, Mark thought his brutal ultimatum would break my spirit and force me onto my knees. He had no idea that by demanding my surrender, he was actually handing me the key to my ultimate freedom.